FEMA's official emergency preparedness kit recommendation has not meaningfully changed in decades. 3 days of food and water, a flashlight, a battery radio, a first aid kit, some copies of important documents. It is not wrong exactly. It is just designed for a 72-hour power outage in a stable country with functioning institutions standing by to help you. It is not designed for what happens when those institutions are overwhelmed, delayed, or simply not coming. It is not designed for a week. It is not designed for infrastructure failure that lasts longer than a long weekend. And it is specifically not designed to make you genuinely self-sufficient, because genuinely self-sufficient civilians are harder to manage in a mass emergency than civilians who are waiting for direction. That is not a conspiracy, it is logistics. When the agency responsible for coordinating disaster response also writes your preparedness checklist, the list reflects their operational needs as much as yours. Tonight we go past the list. 9 specific items that meaningfully extend your survival window, your options, and your independence beyond what the official guidance covers. Subscribe now so you never miss a video on this channel. And stay for number 8. It is the most overlooked item in serious civilian preparedness, and it costs less than a fast food meal. 1. A gravity-fed water filter rated for long-term use. FEMA recommends 1 gallon of water per person per day for 3 days. That is the floor of survival hydration, not comfortable hydration, and it assumes the crisis ends at 72 hours. It also assumes you have somewhere to get that water from after your stored supply runs out. A gravity-fed ceramic or hollow fiber filter changes the equation entirely. Instead of storing every liter you might need, you store capacity. The ability to process water from a bathtub, a rain collection, a stream, or any non-chemical source into safe drinking water indefinitely, without power, without pumping, without replacement cartridges for tens of thousands of liters. 2. A minimum 90-day medication supply for every chronic condition in your household. The official guidance mentions prescription medications almost as an afterthought. Gather a supply of your medications, it says, without specifying how much or explaining what happens when the pharmacy supply chain breaks down past 72 hours. Here is what happens. After major disasters, medication supply chains routinely take weeks to normalize. Insulin-dependent diabetics, cardiac patients, people managing seizure disorders, people on psychiatric medications with serious discontinuation effects. For these individuals, a 3-day supply is not a safety net, it is a countdown. 3. A wood-burning or multi-fuel cooking capability that requires no propane. FEMA does not recommend alternative cooking infrastructure at all. The assumption is that the disruption will be short enough that cooking continuity is not a priority. That assumption has been wrong in enough documented disasters that it deserves to be challenged directly. A rocket stove, a wood gasifier stove, or even a simple brick-and-grate configuration gives you the ability to cook using whatever combustible material is locally available. Scrap wood, cardboard, dried organic matter. In a prolonged grid-down scenario where propane has run out and resupply is not arriving, this capability is the difference between hot food and cold cans for an indefinite period. This is not a glamorous item. It is a clay pot and a handful of sticks if necessary. The principle is simple. Reduce your dependency on any single fuel source that requires a functioning supply chain to replenish. 4. A hand-powered or solar shortwave and AM radio receiver. FEMA recommends a battery radio. That recommendation is correct as far as it goes. What it does not address is the information environment beyond the 72-hour window when local emergency broadcasts have normalized or gone silent, and you still need situational awareness about what is happening at a regional or national level. Shortwave radio receives international broadcasts that continue functioning through domestic infrastructure failure. During major crises in multiple countries, international shortwave broadcasts from services like the BBC World Service and Voice of America provided civilian populations with accurate information when domestic media was compromised or controlled. 5. Oral rehydration salts in meaningful quantity. This item does not appear anywhere in standard emergency preparedness guidance, despite the fact that dehydration and waterborne illness are among the most common causes of civilian mortality in disaster and conflict scenarios globally. When water quality degrades, gastrointestinal illness follows. Diarrheal disease causes rapid fluid and electrolyte loss that plain water cannot replace fast enough. Oral rehydration salts, a specific combination of sodium, potassium, glucose, and water, are the frontline treatment for this condition and are on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines for exactly this reason. A box of oral rehydration salt packets costs under $10, takes up almost no space, has a multi-year shelf life, and addresses one of the most statistically likely medical emergencies in any extended survival scenario. The official guidance does not mention it. Now you know about it. 6. A tourniquets and wound packing kit. Standard first aid kit guidance covers bandages, antiseptic, and over-the-counter medications. It does not cover the injuries most likely to be fatal in an actual high-intensity emergency. Arterial bleeding, deep wounds, and traumatic injuries that require intervention beyond a bandage are the leading causes of preventable death in disaster and conflict scenarios. A tourniquet costs under $30. Wound packing gauze, specifically hemostatic gauze treated to accelerate clotting, costs under $20. A single lesson in hemorrhage control, available free through programs like Stop the Bleed, which operates in most countries, takes 90 minutes. This combination addresses the category of injury that kills people in the gap between when something happens and when professional medical help arrives. In an extended emergency where that gap is measured in days rather than minutes, this is not optional equipment. It is the difference between a survivable injury and a preventable death. 7. A complete set of physical maps for your region. FEMA mentions nothing about navigation. The assumption is that your phone works and the cell network is functioning. Both assumptions fail early in serious emergencies and fail completely in conflict scenarios. A physical road atlas and a detailed topographic map of your immediate region give you navigation capability that requires no signal, no battery, and no infrastructure. More importantly, they give you route planning capability. The ability to look at terrain, identify secondary roads, locate water sources, and plan evacuation routes that do not depend on the highway everyone else is also taking. Buy them once. Store them in your vehicle and in your go bag. They weigh almost nothing and they function identically on the worst day you will ever have as on the day you bought them. 8. A hand-operated grain mill or manual food processor. This is the one. The item that costs under $40, weighs under 2 kilograms, and is present in almost zero civilian preparedness setups despite the fact that it addresses one of the most predictable long-term survival constraints. Whole grains, the most shelf-stable, calorie-dense, affordable bulk food available, require processing to be fully usable. Wheat berries, dried corn, dried legumes. You can cook whole grains directly, but the caloric and nutritional access from milled grain is significantly higher. More importantly, milling opens up your ability to bake, to extend your food variety, and to maintain something approaching normal nutrition over weeks and months. A hand mill with steel burrs processes grain indefinitely without electricity. It is the infrastructure behind the food supply rather than the food supply itself, and like the water filter, it converts a finite stockpile into an ongoing capability. 9. A written household emergency plan that every member of your household has read. FEMA mentions this. It is the one area where the official guidance is completely correct and almost universally ignored. The gap between knowing you should have a plan and actually having a written, distributed, rehearsed plan that every adult and older child in your household can execute independently is where most civilian preparedness fails entirely. Not a mental note, not a conversation you had once, a written document, evacuation triggers, meeting points, out-of-area contact information, each person's specific responsibilities, medical information for every household member, vehicle and route assignments, communication protocols. Print it. Put a copy in every go bag, review it twice a year. The document itself costs nothing. The discipline to create and maintain it is the actual price. And it is the force multiplier that makes every other item on this list function as a system instead of a collection of unconnected supplies. FEMA's guidance gets you through a long weekend. These 9 items get you through what comes after that. Not because the official guidance is dishonest, but because it is designed for a scenario that is increasingly not the one we actually live in. Self-sufficiency is not anti-government. It is the acknowledgement that in a serious emergency, the gap between when something happens and when help arrives is your problem to manage. Drop a comment below. Tell me which of these 9 was the biggest gap in your current setup. The honest answers are what make this channel worth watching for the next person who finds it. Subscribe if this is the preparedness content your feed has been missing. And the next video goes somewhere most channels will not. We are talking about the medical skills, not supplies, that every civilian household should have before a crisis makes learning them impossible. That one is coming soon. Do not miss it.